Hey everybody, thanks for checking out this week's episode of My First Sketch at myfirstsketch.com. I'm Josh Hyam. As always, feel free to subscribe to the show on iTunes or on SoundCloud and get it automatically. You can catch the show on the Stitcher app as well if you use that. Like the podcast on Facebook at facebook.com/myfirstsketch. Email me at josh@myfirstsketch.com. Follow me on Twitter at myfirstsketch. And I put all the videos that we talk about on the show on myfirstsketch.com, so if you're like, hey, what is he talking about? Just go there. Chances are you can see for yourself. Let's start off with some self-promotion. This Thursday, October 5th at 9 p.m., I will be performing with a crew of people that were randomly assigned together in sync or sketch at Philly Improv Theater. We performed together for the first time last month, and by result of a tie, we are doing it again. So come and see that. Then, I have to remind everyone that Philly Sketch Fest is returning with Dirtiest Sketch in Philadelphia on October 20th at the Playground at the Adrienne. It's a late show, 10 p.m. So come and see your favorite sketch comedians in Philly getting gross and awful and making me cringe. Alright, now that that's all taken care of, today's guest is Ian Vaflor, formerly a castmate and writing partner of mine in Judo Range, and he now works with the pro wrestling company Kaiju Big Battel. If you've never heard of Kaiju Big Battel, it is pro wrestling meets monster movie, and we'll tell you more about it and some exciting stuff for Kaiju's future as we chat. His first sketch is called Cop and Bee. Ian in a deep voice plays the chief, and then Ian with a nasal voice plays Lester. I give whatever stage directions you need and play Ramirez. So let's go to the sketch. Interior Police Chief's office. Behind the desk sits the chief, Marcus Carter. Papers cover his desk and he's holding his head. Sitting near the desk is Mark Lester. He looks nervous. The door opens and police officer Jim Ramirez enters. Also, a bee flies in. You wanted to see me, Chief?
Yeah, Ramirez. Thanks for coming in. I'm assigning you a new partner. Mark Lester, this is Jim Ramirez.
No offense, Chief, but I already have a partner.
That bee is not your partner.
You signed us together. Flashback. Interior Chief's office 6 weeks earlier. The chief is wearing different clothes and he's having a fierce argument with Ramirez. There's also a bee flying around. I've lost 3 partners, Chief, and maybe you should let me work alone.
You'll work with whoever I tell you to work with. I don't care if it's the greenest rookie or the oldest veteran. You'll do as I say. From now on, Chief Marcus Carter is the Lord Almighty as far as you're concerned.
The chief waves a bee away from his face.
God damn it, bee. If I wanted to make this bee your partner, I could. Do you hear what I'm saying?
A bee? My partner?
Say yes and get out of my office.
Flashback over. Back to the present.
That was a hypothetical situation. I would never make a bee your partner.
I used to feel the same way, Chief, but after working on a few cases together and seeing this bee in action, I've changed my mind. He's the best damn partner I've ever had.
This bee is not on the force.
You can't kick him off the force.
I'm not. He was never on the force. He's a bee.
Sure, he doesn't play by your rules, but he gets the job done. There should be enough for number counters in City Hall.
The only job he gets done is collecting pollen and nectar.
You're scared of him, aren't you?
Yes, but only because I'm allergic to bees.
Come on, Chief. This bee helped me catch more heart.
How?
He led me to the body in the Bay Street greenhouse.
Are you sure he wasn't attracted to the greenhouse by the flowers?
I'm not sure of his methods, but I'm sure of his results. Lester stands up.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Chief and Ramirez look at Lester.
How long has that bee been your partner?
6 weeks today.
Does anybody know how long the lifespan is of a honeybee?
Everyone stares at each other. The bee falls. No! Ramirez picks up the bee. Damn it! He was too young! The chief shrugs. He puts his hand on Ramirez's shoulder.
I'm sorry, Ramirez.
Ramirez looks at the chief.
He was a good cop.
Thanks, Chief. It's good to hear you say that. I know you and the bee never saw eye to eye.
Anyway, Lester here will be your new partner.
You got big shoes to fill. Lester looks at the chief, who simply sits back down and covers his head with his hands.
I'll do my best.
You remind me a little bit of the bee. Ramirez and Lester start to head out. Ramirez pulls something out of his pocket. I'll drive. You ride in this piece of honeycomb. Hey, Ian.
Hey, Josh.
So, a cop that's partners with a bee.
Yes.
Where does this come from? What's this idea?
Growing up watching a lot of Starsky and Hutch, I think this was like one of the earliest. This was actually probably one of the first sketches I ever wrote.
I hope so, because it's my first sketch.
Yeah. I was really like trying to go dig through the annals of Gmail. And just
because this was a forwarded message that Yeah,
it was a forwarded message from like 2011, and I remember writing the sketch itself probably like 2006 or 2007. It was right around the time I was just finishing up doing like sketch workshops and stuff at UCB, but like it became like a cop and something is one of the dumbest tropes.
When I got into doing stuff in the city, I immediately have a rule of no cops. like after I did the class show with Kevin Allison in like December of 2011, and I think there was like 12 sketches on that bill, and 5 of them had a cop one way or another. So immediately after that, I was like, I will never write a cop sketch ever in my life.
I think I went like full force into cop sketches. When we were in Judo Range, I think I wrote that one where it was intentionally like a cop kept showing up in every beat.
All right, this is what I know about you. Trained on the cello.
Yeah.
And that was your college
that's
music.
what I thought I was going to do for a living. Yeah.
So where does comedy come?
I think it was pretty much like I was looking for something to do that wasn't. So I lived in New York for a little bit. Mm-hmm. I was a DJ there. I worked as a DJ on the side, like it's like a hobby, and I just got burned out, and I was still looking for something to do. I always liked going to sketch comedy, TV sketch comedy. You know,
right.
Like we all cut our teeth on that.
Like, what were you watching? What was your
growing up, dude?
Yeah.
Probably some of my earliest memories are watching old late night bits with my dad, and also Saturday Night Live.
Like the Letterman late nights?
Yeah, so like those. So I didn't really understand like anything that was going on with the guests, but the things that always stuck out were all those like bits.
Yeah.
Like the old Robert Schmeigel bits and everything, and like just the really weird things like the very few people remembers, but for some reason he used to have this recurring bit with a fountain that shot wine everywhere.
On Letterman?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was like super little, but that was like one of the earliest memories. But then on top of that, CBS late nights, because I didn't have cable growing up.
Yeah,
would show Kids in the Hall.
Okay.
Would just show long blocks of Kids in the Hall. So I used to set my VCR timer.
Okay.
Just take that, and then like that was a big part. And then also even before that, it's crazy like how much TV. This is where all my cop sketches come from. Right. Just watching TV. Like Benny Hill and Monty Python on public television.
Right.
Were the two other things, because that was like the only thing I wasn't allowed to watch anything on like standard channels. So it was like UHF channels.
Right. The idea of Monty Python being on PBS comes up a lot because it's everyone's introduction to Monty Python here in America.
Yeah.
But you always think of PBS as like the safe choice. Yep. Nothing can go wrong. And then this wildly subversive Monty Python shows up on PBS. Like there's an odd. I don't know, it's just so bizarre that Monty Python came to PBS. At least in my, because PBS to me was like, you had the whole block of children's things and then educational stuff, like Nova, and then Monty Python shows. It was very bizarre to me.
Very bad for like a 5 to 6 year old's brain, because to me, I'm like, oh, it's cartoons. I'm watching cartoons.
Right, because there's interstitials. I don't think I was introduced to Monty Python until teenage years, and I didn't get it.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't funny to me. Like, it was weird. Like, it wasn't a thing until 18 years old.
That's when
it really clicked on me, and really.
Yeah, because I knew it was a thing, and I remember watching I had a VHS copy of the Holy Grail when I was maybe 12 or 13, and that's easy enough for a young kid to understand. But I just knew that it was the guys who made this thing that I used to watch when I was little, and I would still watch. I'm like, I don't quite get it because it's too Dadaist.
Even the first time I saw Holy Grail, I didn't understand it. Like the ending of it, I was like, wait, what? No. like how many other comedy people are like, that ending's garbage. Like, and now I look back and 15-year-old Josh was dumb and 18-year-old Josh got smartened up to it. It's much better.
Like all that, like Kids in the Hall, Monty Python are probably my two biggest influences. I used to like The State a lot, obviously, and then there was that other show with Julie Brown and like Jennifer Aniston. Do you remember?
Yeah, I know it exists.
Wayne Knight was on it. Like
I'm
I used to
trying
watch
to think
it all
of
the time.
Was it The Edge?
I think that's what it was called.
Or
yeah,
it was something The Edge, The Wall, something.
Yeah.
Completely undescript and nondescript. I ask. You mentioned Saturday Night Live. Favorite Saturday Night Live cast member. Let's get it out of the way.
Oh God.
I ask everyone this question.
Like
ever.
This is really tough. I was actually having a conversation with coworkers about this, but I'm gonna have to say Kenan Thompson.
Really?
Think about it, like hands down, man. Like I thought about it. I was like, oh my gosh, he's been on that show forever.
I was thinking about this I think he overtakes Daryl Hammond if he stays on this year.
Yeah.
I think he becomes the longest tenured cast member, period. But then he's been on the show for a third of its existence.
Yeah.
That's bananas to me.
It's really weird because I think what it comes down to is like when he showed up, then there was like a definite shift on like the type of writing, the casting and the writing.
Okay.
I think it like predated right before like all the UCB people started showing up, but a lot of his sensibility like fits in line with that. I mean, like I love like all the Dana Carvey, John Lovitz.
Yeah.
Like the core '90s cast. I love them to death. But when I think about like who's important to me for a lot of reasons, like a person of color, somebody who brings like a little bit of his sketches are absurd.
Yeah.
They're insane. Like that's definitely what I love.
I forget there was an article about him a year ago or so because they were talking about like him entering his 14th year or whatever it happened to be.
Yeah.
And they were talking about like he could be the straight man in the sketch and still get laughs. Like, there's always a cut to his reaction. There's always some like look of incredulous or like disgust that he'll do in everything. Like the one I can think of right off the top of my head is Kate McKinnon does the barfly sketch, and she did it like the first time I saw it, I think it was Louis C.K. was the guy where they like get amorous and like just gross, and it just always goes back to him like oh, or like this is and he's gonna get the laugh even though those two are doing the funny bits.
Yeah,
he's
but it
still
doesn't
gonna
like
get the
detract.
laugh.
He like doesn't detract from the bit.
No,
it adds to it. He plays to the camera, as they say.
Yeah, it's not. He's not mugging like Milton Berle is.
Yeah.
He's
like
actually truly reacting.
Fallon,
like
Jimmy Fallon would. Like, and I love Jimmy Fallon like SNL stuff too. But it's like you're obviously a dude doing a sketch. You're not like
he
immersed.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned New York City. You mentioned so UCB is that your introduction to?
Yeah, like to formal training.
Yeah.
More or less. Yeah.
Do you remember what all do you do at UCB? Like what all training stuff do you do?
I did like all the improv stuff, and then I took a lot of sketch intensives when I could.
Do you remember your instructors? And
mostly Shannon O'Neill.
Okay.
And I remember
I knew that.
She was like, "You have to stop taking classes with me because you were doing exactly like me." You're like, Zach Woods was also one of my instructors.
Ooh, fancy.
And it was crazy too because like we're from kind of the same town. Okay. His older brother has like mutual friends with some of my friends. Okay. And that was just kind of like, oh yeah, like we're from the same part of town. So
that is weird.
That was more than a decade ago when I think about it now.
Yeah.
Like this sketch is, like I said, it's probably like 2006, 2007.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Shannon O'Neill, who now is most known for Gethard Show.
Yeah.
I think she's some kind of honcho.
She's one of the creative directors, I think.
Yeah. I wasn't sure if it was like creative director or technical or the schooling director, the principal of the school. Like, I don't know. Yeah. I know she's got some heavy title up there at UCB.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm proud. She was awesome. Yeah.
Like, so you do the sketch workshop, you do improv up there.
I moved back here.
First off, I mean, you're living in New York, and UCB is probably like at its initial rise. How do you find out about it while you're living in New York?
Oh, I had a really good friend of mine, Diane Fornbacher, I went to her level 2 class graduation show, and she just said, you should do this.
Okay, so it was through a friend.
Yeah.
Okay.
She literally was just like, you need this in your life. You should go do this. And it was the weirdest, strange set of coincidences because she's like, this is my friend Shannon. Email her, see if you can get into her class because it was like actually after the cutoff. And then Shannon was like, yeah, just show up and pay and I'll squeeze you in.
Yeah.
So I walk in the office and then my college friend's girlfriend was the office manager at the time. And I feel really bad for forgetting her name because she's like, Eliza Skinner.
Okay. Yeah. I know that name.
Yeah. Like she was like, oh, hey, because I hadn't seen her since like we were doing radio show in college together. What the hell are you doing here? I was like, I'm going to do make-em-ups, And then, I'm just throwing names on the floor all over the place because she's like, yeah, give your check to that guy over there who was none other than Chris Gethard, who was also one of the office guys.
We'll pick those right back up,
put them on the table.
Put them back on the table.
But yeah, it's like a fun, strange set of coincidences. Like everything's kind of. I remember Eliza from doing. My friend did a comedy game show, radio show at JMU. So that's like, we weren't like good buds or anything like that. But it was like, oh, here's a face I haven't seen in like 8 years or something like that.
JMU, go Dukes.
Yeah.
All right, so you do other classes at UCB. You move back to Philadelphia. What are you doing in Philadelphia?
Working a sales job and still DJing, but then still being like, I still want to do comedy stuff. I had done a couple shows at Bucks County Community College, like short form improv stuff and some sketch stuff with some friends I grew up with, and that was fun. And I really scratched another itch.
How does that come about?
I think they were like friends with Bill McLaughlin, and then he had a couple fundraisers. Okay. And it was kind of funny because like I remember just my training at the time clashing with like whatever they were learning at Bucks. And I remember telling Shannon, like, yeah, I did a bunch of short form shows. And she's like, what the fuck? I'm sorry. I don't know.
You can, girl. I don't really care.
She's like, what the fuck? But I remember like still, like we had fun. And it was just a matter of, they were married and had kids and stuff like that. And I just couldn't really find anybody who, like it took a while for me to find people that I could start performing with. And then my friend Dom, who's out in Hollywood, he's like developing shows for like Cartoon Network and stuff. Like he and I were just like, we should just start writing together, but still like we didn't have a place to do stuff.
Right, and that's Dom Machidi?
Yeah, Dom Machidi. And PHIT, I think, was still in its like super infancy. Yeah,
because there was a time, and like even going back to when I just noticed that your inhaler's on the table. Because even back in the time where Judo Range was doing shows.
Yeah.
PHIT was only 2 weeks, and it wasn't even like full weeks. It was like
it was just 2 weeks.
Four nights, 2 weeks a month, like and that was it.
At the Shubin.
And
at that point, like it still felt like, oh yeah, now this is a community.
Before that, like they were just PHIT was a random show, and then it graduated to a week at another spot, and then the 2 weeks at Shubin slowly built up to Adrienne.
A buddy of mine came in to do an improv workshop. Ben Rameka did it, and I remember just like jaw-jacking with him afterwards. He's just like, yeah, man, like it's good to see you here. And he's just like, I hope this really blows up into some. He's like, there's a lot of good stuff here, kind of like beginning. And it's kind of cool to see where it is now. Like I don't have a whole lot of my very dubious free time. Yeah, it's like it's good to see. I like seeing posts, and I try to get out every once in a while to go to shows. So.
I talked to Steve Swan a couple of weeks ago, and your name came up with Bear Hug.
Yeah.
So, is that like your first?
I think that was Dom, Steve, Becca Traben, Jason, Grimley, Dan McLeese, and myself.
Okay.
Were like the first iteration of it, and it was like, that was a lot of fun. It was like my first experience writing with a group of people at different skill levels. So you'd like learn to kind of like temper versus like going through like a structured system where we're all like sketch 101 and we all have to like learn. So there were a lot of times like pitching ideas and things like that, and like working with people. Like we didn't see eye to eye a lot of times, but it was never like
right like, there's a difference between going through the class system and then when you're working with a group of peers and banding back, fighting back and forth about stuff. Like there's a different dynamic to that for sure. And then how do you get involved with Judo Range? I keep looking for the email.
Yeah.
The invitation.
I think it was just really organic of all of us just hanging out, and then starting to
Well,
write.
if I remember correctly, there was a mass email that Matt J sent. I think it was Matt J sent out saying, "Hey, I want to pursue this with you people. Let's meet somewhere and hang out."
I think it was actually like a Facebook message or something.
Okay, so maybe that's why I haven't found the email. Because I took that show class with Kevin Allison and Chris Coletta, Mike Dieva, Matt J were all in that class, and we became 4 of the members of Judo Range. I think the first time we met was at your apartment.
Yeah.
And I forget all what happened, like, because I think initially there's like 10,
There
and
was
then
a lot of us.
and then it whittled down to like 7.
Yeah.
And then we added Blythe at a certain point, and then that became Judo
like
Range.
the core. Yeah. When I think about it, there were a lot of people. I think so. I was writing and performing. I think I was performing more with Bear Hug than writing, which kind of like it got to the point where it's like everybody has their own specific voice, and I think that was like it was just like, yeah, I love you guys. My voice doesn't really fit with the group, and I think it was because like they were all coming up writing together from like PHIT sketch stuff or whatever, and I already had a lot of like my own kind of like tempo. So then my friend Devant and I were doing a lot of shows together.
Devant, who was our technical director in Judo Range.
Yeah, and then sometimes performer.
Which is, first off, every sketch group should have a tech director. Like,
yeah.
One thing I learned from Judo Range was have someone that knows what they're doing on that end.
Yeah.
Like, for sure.
He's one of the best dudes for that. And
yeah.
He was like, I remember for a while, like he was being like tapped to do other shows, and he's like, nah, I don't want to do it.
Yeah, I definitely remember him being like asked a couple of times, and he's like, no, I'm these guys. I'm with these guys.
Yeah.
It's like, which is great that we were able to have like a territorial thing about our cool tech director. Like,
yeah, I think that's like because he and I we would travel a lot because we both DJ'd, and a lot of the bits that we wrote, like for Junior Barnes, which was our kind of like vaudeville thing.
Okay.
We have a definite cadence to how we talk to each other and like our wordplay, and that's basically what all those were. And I was actually thinking about bringing a couple of those sketches, but they're like out of context. We would always write stuff specifically for like a show. When Meg still did her thing, like we would come up with all these bits to just kind of like play her as like the host, and just constantly frustrating Meg.
Yeah.
I think there was one where it was like right after Halloween, and he's like, "Hey, I got this really great robot I invented that like detects candy." And it's just me in a box.
Because I think I'm the same way. Where the first couple times I did like SketchUp or whatever in town, I was very local about certain things. Like, the first time I did SketchUp was a character that I still love. It's a pastor character who bought the theater, but is still going to allow you guys to do your makeup ups.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I wrote the second time I did it, I specifically said that Brian Craig was like stuck in the toilet for a week or something because like he got sick on something, and it was the name didn't matter. It had to be someone in the room.
Yeah.
So like I was scanning. I was like, all right, let's do Brian Craig. I don't know him well. Let's make fun of him.
We did write a sketch where it was all of us selling bootleg merchandise to raise money for the theater.
Yeah, I think that was one of the our theme show endeavors was like because our theme shows were never actual sketches. It was like bits like, hey Steve, like because when we were doing theme show, Steve Swan and Pat Foy were the hosts. And we're like, hey, can you do this with us? Like, and Steve's like, yeah, sure, whatever. Like, so, all right. So our time in Judo Range together, we lasted about 9 months.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
But we were really busy, and maybe not prolific, but we did a ton of work in those 9 months.
Yeah,
I feel
it really felt like 2 years. But then I looked at the timestamps of all the sketches that we were going back and forth on, and it's like a large volume of stuff.
It was like December to 2011 to we'll say November. We'll say September, but the last show was in November because you guys did Sketchfest without me.
Were you in that?
I was not because I was on vacation. I had scheduled a vacation, and you guys did this show without me.
Yeah.
But all right, time of Judo Range.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
I love it. Again,
thoughts.
It's like
bring them up.
Working with a group dynamic. Again, in this case, it's people because I'm an old man.
You were considerably older than most of us.
I'm like Master Roshi, even though I look freaking fantastic. But I think it's like, for me personally, it was just working with a dynamic of people, different levels of maturity, and then also different expectations were set. Everybody had their own goals. I think Devant and myself were kind of the same mind, like, let's have as much fun as possible doing this. And I thought it was, like, the thing that was, I'd have to say the only frustrating thing and the only challenge was scheduling. Because at the time the theater was also, like, doing a whole bunch of stuff, so everybody wanted to be involved in everything. So that caused a lot of conflicts, and then also, like, who are you writing for? You know, like what's the voice? I think a lot of Judo Range I liked a lot because we have very high energy, but also, like, pop culture-y sketches.
Yeah, we were branded as, like, and I don't understand this branding because it fit for a bunch of the people in the group, but not, it didn't fit for me, of, like, we were the nerd sketch comedy. And I'm just like, guys, I'm not a nerd. We'd be hanging out at your apartment, like, playing video games, and I'd be like,
you'd just be like, nerds.
Can we do something? Like,
I don't blame you.
but, like, and I understand, like, there's certain things that, I am nerdy about, like, it's fine. But yeah, like, everyone was fun. Scheduling is always an issue. I've been saying, I've learned this over the last couple of weeks of talking to people, having a consistent schedule or having a compatible schedule is job one of a sketch team now. Like, it doesn't matter you're funny anymore. Like, as long as you can prepare at the same time together, that's step one.
Literally 100 monkeys with a typewriter.
Yeah, it's the easiest.
We'll get a good one.
It's the hardest part of being a sketch comedy tube anymore.
That is 100% truth, man.
Because even we had a night of the week, and we would still get, like, pulled in different directions.
But also it helped that there were 20 million people in Judo Range, so.
Well, there's only like 8.
Yeah.
Or
but that's still, like, enough people to cover bases because everybody's writing stuff and everybody's collaborating together. And I think, like, when I think about it, I think every single one of us collaborate with each other, or at least punch ups on a sketch.
Right.
Like,
I don't think there was ever, like, a real divide of camps. Like, there wasn't, like, 3 of you are always together, 5 of, like, it was never that. Like, there were certain things that Matt J and Chris Coletta lived close enough to each other that they did stuff together, and McGrail might have been in that pocket, but, like, we were all, like, there was never, like, animosity about that either.
Leveraging cloud-based technology to
like,
write sketches.
It's perfectly, next generation technology.
We were in the cloud before, like, any other groups. We're using Google Wave.
Well, when a couple weeks ago, when I talked to Chris McGrail, I had to find his sketch.
Yeah.
And I went through our old Facebook group of I was like, hey, Chris, this is what we're doing. He's like, oh, I forgot about this. Okay. Like, all right, good. Like,
I had to dig deep. Like, I seriously had to jump into Google Drive.
And
then I put in all your names.
I was about to say, I'm sure there's still a Google folder of Judo Range somewhere out there. Like,
there's a list that Devant and I wrote of just dumb names. Which, like, I was gonna bring them. I'm like,
of, like, people names. Like,
we would just come up with stupid character names all the time, and I remember, like, reading them to you guys, and you guys like, "These are dumb."
So we work a lot. We do a couple shows at PHIT. We do every theme shows. I know there was a Camp Woods Plus that there was a little drama in the group, but
it just happens when you're just a bunch of bohunks all getting your ideas through. Which, we might have kicked somebody out, or like.
He quit.
I think we were all burned out by that time too, from, like, 9 months of constantly writing.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know if I was, like, as prolific or as I wrote as much as I did in that period. Like, I feel like I was constantly always having things. Coletta was always had new stuff. McGrail always had this weird idea that he would throw out and eventually come back with this, like, gold piece of.
Oh, and then this
awesomeness.
Is in addition to having a regular tech guy, have a regular director, because Joe Gates was awesome.
Yeah.
He was really good at, like, herding the cats.
But even then, like, he got burnt out before all of us and left halfway through or so. Like,
but he made, I remember getting some really good feedback from a couple of our shows, and we're like, oh, you guys are, like, actual actors in addition to doing silly goofers.
Which no one ever said to me, but
it literally was, like, one of the best notes, like, one of the best compliments. She's like, every single one of you guys, like, just, like, gets really into your characters. I'm like,
I don't entirely feel that's true about me.
I don't know, man. You walked out in an adult diaper.
I was never in an adult diaper. It was only. It would ever be boxers. It was
boxers,
never. Yeah.
But that was, like, that Mount Rushmore sketch was one of the funniest beats.
Yeah, I can just remember like the sketch before that. I'm just like backstage, just spraying myself, like spritzing myself with water so I appear wet like every day, and I'm getting cold. I'm just, and it's just like 3 minutes of just spritzing, spritz, like just wondering what I'm doing in my life.
Yeah, it's like working in a group dynamic. There's a lot of personalities and egos and levels of confidence and expectations, and it's just like in the professional world. You have to learn how to be empathetic to people, but then also not only take criticism, but also learn how to give it. And I'm not like, I'm not like saying like I'm the best or whatever at doing that, but it's just definitely my takeaway.
Because I'm definitely not the best at doing it.
Yeah, like it really helped me when I transitioned from like doing sketch comedy to like producing content for wrestling companies.
Yeah.
Afterwards too, just working with a whole bunch of personalities, and at the end of the day, this wasn't like a Judo Range TV show. My goal was to have as much fun as possible, and sometimes like we had some, like I think of like the really funny stuff that came from that, So.
Yeah. So Judo Range ends. You guys do your final show at Sketchfest without me, where I hear Devon just cooks breakfast.
Yeah.
Off to the side, which
was used for like a final gag at the very. I think it was just used as a prop in the final sketch or something like that.
And I think, I know you guys did one of my sketches, like one of the ones I wrote. I think you took my role, the retweet, the. I think like, which is perfectly fine. I wasn't there. I wasn't going to do it.
We told you we were going to do
it. I know. I appreciate that I still had representation in that last show, even though I think I was up in like New Hampshire with my friends. So after Judo Range, you transition to pro wrestling.
Yeah.
Which was one of the things that we shared in our Judo Range time, because we were both fans of this one local group in Philadelphia, Chikara. I had completely sunk down the rabbit hole of their storytelling, where like I dug deep, because Chikara is a very different company than WWE or whatever else is out there. Because like
it's a living comic book.
There's years of storytelling that don't get paid off until like years later.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what I was brought in for.
Like
to close the loop on like one of the bigger arcs that they did.
And it was crazy. Like the first show that I went to, just trying it out, there was an invasion of this German faction. I think you were at that show.
Yeah.
Like I don't think you were in official capacity yet.
Yeah.
But like this German faction, and that's a whole year and a half of story and like just bizarreness. And then you tell me, wait until you see this. And then there's another invasion of characters that were kicked out of the school, and like this whole another storyline of another like bad guy group coming in.
But it was also like really subversive of how we do that, because that's one of the most common wrestling tropes.
Yeah,
basically it was I'm friends with Tim Donst. I'm friends with Bryce from doing comedy in Philly, and they recommended me to the owner, Mike, who's like the main writer too, and he just had this like vision and kind of laid it out for me. And he said, "How do I put this all together?" And he knew that I was doing a lot of like sketch comedy, and like there were narrative arcs and stuff like that to some of the video stuff that we had done. And he just tasked me with one of the biggest secrets I had to keep for like 2 years.
Yeah, like.
So, like it was culminated into a web series that was done super guerrilla style, zero negative budget. A lot of Judo Range guys were part of that too.
Let's start with there.
Okay.
First off, there's a part of me that's annoyed that I was never asked to be.
I had to, and that was like, I had to like not tell you. Like I was like, man, I can't tell Josh
I knew
about
I was
this.
being protected.
Yeah, like I wanted you to enjoy what was happening.
All right, so the story of your involvement. Chikara runs a show at the Trocadero in Chinatown.
Yeah.
There's this overarching story of the corporate bosses
played by Brian Craig.
Being played by Brian Craig, which I really hope I get to break kayfabe with him and talk about this with him. Being unhappy with the wrestling product because they have caught on to some kind of corporate conspiracy.
Training mercenaries for
yeah.
So
So Brian Craig, as this character, Wink Vavasor, calls out this wave of security guards.
Those are all my friends.
One of which was Chris Coletta, and I noticed him right away. And I was like, hey. I just wanted to be like, hey, Chris. But I didn't because, you got to keep. And they shut down the show.
Yeah.
They kick everybody out of the Trocadero.
Yep.
Some dude breaks the front door.
Which was legit, and we got real scared. Yeah.
And the dude had to pay for it.
Yep.
He was actually brought back into the building to get a,
Which
ID
was
and
great
everything.
because the security guard, our fake security guards, were the ones who grabbed him by the collar and threw him into the building, which was one of the best things ever because the fans were like, "Oh wait, they're actually a real security team."
And the cool thing, one of the cool things is Bryce Remsburg, who's the referee of this company, leaves crying.
Yeah.
Carrying just a box of his stuff, as if he had been fired and he was running away, basically. I think you were milling around the front because you were also playing an on-screen role.
I was one of the hosts.
You were one of the hosts.
My real-life roommate at the time, they were both security guys.
I remember seeing those guys.
He's yelling at me, and I whispered to him, "Punch me in the face as hard as you can." He's like, "What?" I said, "Just punch me in the face," and he just potatoed me across the eye.
And he did.
It cracked. It made it awesome.
And you should have been like, by the way, I'm going to be late with rent because of that.
No, it was awesome because people were like, "Oh wait, I think these guys are legit."
Yeah.
At that point. Yeah.
So there's a part of me. So I'm watching all this unfold, and it's this really surreal, and it's this it's one of the coolest moments I've ever seen.
Thanks, man.
Even knowing, I know him. But it was still a really surreal moment as a pro wrestling, as a Chikara fan. I don't have anything.
That's right. Keep going.
As a Chikara fan, and then this goes into your creating this video content.
Yeah, I had already been, and that's the whole thing is that a year prior, we had already started working on it, and it's because I was producing the comedy videos that we were doing for Chikara, and astute fans can notice there's little seeds hidden in all those videos.
Yeah.
Which eventually killed my workplace laptop editing all those together.
But so Chikara goes out of business in June of 14.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Something like that.
That's about right.
And then all these videos start traipsing in of various characters. You see where they are now since Chikara is no longer a thing. And it's called Ashes.
Yep.
So you have all these little shorts that are weekly or every other week.
We shot them as much as we could in a block. And I have to thank Andre Bennett and Chris Coletta and Maureen Costello and
you had a little crew of people. Yeah.
So many people worked on the working
again. Never asking me to help. That's fine.
So all this stuff you can find this on their own podcast, but the actual process of that was one of the most insane things because I was also working a 9-to-5 job and in a relationship and everything, which all went to hell because of this project. Which I'm very whatever. The workflow was such as I would get barely a screenplay from the head guy.
Mm-hmm.
And then just hey, I just want to have these types of shots and these types. So it was very much how, as a sketch writer, your initial kind of ideas would come together.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would have to fill in the blanks and I would work with a cast. And then I would write something that's kind of like a screenplay.
Yeah.
And then a lot of times Andre or Maureen or Jimmy or Colette and I would be scribbling, blocking shots on a piece of paper while I was driving to a location at 6 a.m. And then you honestly have 1 or 2 takes because of budgetary reasons and also because of the working the way that wrestling guys work, which again best dudes to work with because they would a lot of times it would just be one and done, boom, you're out. They would just nail it on the first try. There's a lot of motion and directing, my experience directing sketch comedy and stuff like that really came to play because a lot of times it was just prepping them ahead of time. You'd have a lot of times these guys had no idea what was going on either. They're just wait, what's happening? And then I'd have to sit down with Spielberg, talk to them for a little bit in another room, and then get them to do some of the best lines ever. Yeah.
So and then all right, so these little videos are released, week by week, month by month, and then the story of it becomes Chikara's coming back.
Yeah.
And you guys create. There's a full movie. There's a full. Was it 70, 80 minutes?
It's like 80 minutes long.
Like, it's a full thing.
Needed a couple more months in the oven, in my opinion. It was, again, budget, and at that point the project was kind of out of my hands.
My big criticism is that there's a couple sound issues. Like that's my major, but like. This is for a whole other podcast. But there's a little dubbing, I think that's a little
this mic
wonky.
is not picking up how hard my eyes are rolling. I'm really proud of the end result because, like, it got panned by the wrestling community, rightly so, because it honestly needed like another 3-4 months and a couple tens of thousands of dollars in post-production for it to be the way it needed to be. But when you think about it, was literally like towards the last few months, it was like Andre and myself in my car in the middle of winter scrambling to get stuff done. And then the editor who came in last second, like very, very last second, to kind of like salvage everything for the movie cut, did an amazing job. It's a
see, like, and I don't really remember like the reaction to everything about it. Like, you know,
people hated it.
You say it was critically panned and stuff, but like
Mike himself hated it for a while. So.
Like my one issue is there's like 2 scenes where audio is very clearly dubbed, and like, and that's that's gonna happen. Like, it just feels weird to me for those 10 minutes that's on stage, but it's so completely different. It's a different presentation of what pro wrestling can be. And now
it changed. It changed like how other people, because Lucha Underground all of a sudden started looking like that.
Yeah.
TNA started shooting stuff like that. I had casual social meetings with people who like worked in productions for some other companies. Where, oh, hey, I wanted to meet you. Wow. And one of the biggest things was when I think it was Maureen and myself shot a Chikara like jokey promo where it was like speed dating with the characters, and then the following season there was a Royal Rumble promo which was the same exact thing.
Okay, right, because I completely forgot about you. I mean, you mentioned the jokey promos. Like, there's like all these like little like comedy shorts featuring the Chikara characters.
Yeah, that was all me and Coletta.
What was it? It was Dinner with the Hatfields, where they were just these one little joke blackout sketch kind of things. Where the one I remember is there's a reference to Dirty Round Scoundrels because what was he, a hockey player in that?
He was a boxer. It was Kevin Condren as a boxer.
And he had a cork on his fork, and I laughed at that. I was like, "Yay, cork on the fork!" Like,
we did one with Juan Francisco, which my laptop died and I lost everything as I was editing it. And he ended up taking it and filming it with one of his friends, which I'm so glad they finally got it out because it's so good. But it's him interviewing himself.
I don't think I've ever seen that.
It's really good.
Doesn't
it's called
sound
like
familiar.
One-on-One. It's really, really good. But he's one of my favorite people to work with. His comedic timing is top notch.
So you're tasked to create these comedy shorts for a pro wrestling company. Like, how is that any different than? Like, how's that a different experience than all your other sketch comedy experience prior to that?
It's easier. Honestly, it's easier because the characters are already established. So it's easy. Like, you don't have to waste time setting up exposition of like who this person is. A lot of my early sketches, and it's like a brand new sketch writer's kind of thing, is that they waste pages and pages being like, I'm upset about this and this is what I do. And it's like, no, dude, like cop and be. It's like boom, boom, boom.
The first half page is always like setting up who these people are, and
it's like, no, dude, that's a cop, that's a B, that's a police chief.
Yeah.
Like, this is a motorcyclist.
There's archetypes for a reason. There's costumes for a reason.
So these guys already have these like well-defined characters, and it's like super easy. So the dating game one is great because it's one of my favorite examples because it's just taking the essence of these characters and putting them in a weird situation where they're not fighting and they're not confrontational. Right. So it's like, how would this person who's just this smarmy shitheel like try to hit on, like, present himself at a speed dating session in the basement of a taco joint? You know?
Again, it's another subversion of what you expect from pro wrestling. Yeah. Like, to varying degrees of success and varying people's enjoyment online, because wrestling fans can be picky and annoying.
They're the best.
Can be picky and annoying.
No, I honestly do. Like I love. So I was at WrestleMania for the past few years, working for the WWN, like, kind of super show that they do, and I'm just sitting there hawking my rubber monster suit T-shirts and stuff like that, and 3 dudes just come up to me out of nowhere and they're like, "Hey, are you Billy?" And I'm like, "Yeah, hey, how you doing?" And they just talked. I almost started crying, man, because like they were talking to me about this project, and it was 2 friends telling their one friend, they're like, "This is the guy who was like behind the camera and like kind of like doing everything. And I'm like, how did you guys know that? And they're like, yeah, like, and I was like, you're the first random people that I don't know that have ever like.
Well, like on one hand, when we're all social media, you can find stuff like.
Yeah, but
like
it's my own thing. I focus on the negative. But it's yeah.
Like I can go through your Facebook page and find out who everyone is.
I try to really keep it tight, but I don't care anymore. Like, here's my MDB page. Hire me for stuff.
But you also worked with another wrestling group. Work.
I am
still
am
work. Still okay.
And I'm really excited to talk about that. Right.
All right. So, another company. The first time I experienced it, I didn't get it. There was enough negatives about it that I kind of turned off for it. But Kaiju Big Battel.
Yes, that's where I'm currently. I'm one of the writers and producers of that, and I'm really excited to actually talk about what that is. So once I was done with Chikara, like once that arc was done, I was pretty much like, okay, we cool, and then I was like, yeah, okay,
time to move on. Yeah.
And the former ring announcer of Chikara was like, hey, you should really work with Big Battel because he was a ring announcer there also, and then he moved to the West Coast and is like doing his thing out there. But then I reached out to the owners who I already knew. I've known them for more than a decade.
Yeah, they would have been around. They would have been.
Yeah, like it was like the same. We all moved in the same group, and I was like, hey, like, let me do this because you're just kind of doing the same thing, and it's still sticking with the wrestling thing. And I went and gathered up all my friends from UCB, and we kind of like just brought new life into it. Like the last 3 years or so, I've been really kind of like rebuilding it.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a whole new group of people, and we got a lot of the original people back. Okay. Like a lot of the puppet builders and stuff like that. And since I've been writing it, it's more like a sketch comedy show that happens to have wrestling in it, which I'm very familiar with.
Right.
And I've been able to put in some really fun guest stars who a lot of people don't know are under those masks because they get to do stuff like.
Because you're booking I assume that a bunch of the characters, a bunch of the costumed performers, the big giant monsters. Because I don't think we've mentioned that Kaiju Big Battel is a wrestling promotion that is modeled off of the Japanese monster movies.
Yeah.
So they're pro wrestlers in these giant foam rubber monster suits.
If Chikara is like comic as like the Avengers or Spider-Man come to life in a wrestling ring, Kaiju Big Battel is absolutely the Power Rangers and Godzilla. Yeah. In a wrestling ring, and I've been traveling pretty extensively with them for the past 2 years. And I guess I can talk about this now. We had a soft launch at E3 this past year on Twitch. Okay. And I'm producing for Twitch is announcing like a new media platform, and we're developing programming for them. We're going to be doing TwitchCon in like October, and we've been like shooting for like a past year or so.
So Kaiju's going to be on Twitch.
Yeah, and not just as like here's our matches, but it's like actual like
an actual
show.
No.
Yeah.
A continuing series now.
Yeah. Like if you go back and you watch the Devolver E3 conference, pre-E3 conference, like you can kind of see the seeds of that. Because we had Dr. Cube essentially like hosting the like Twitch's E3 show. And one of the biggest bumps, I didn't sleep for 24 hours because I wanted to see, I just was glued to watching the metrics. And I hate that this is like a measure of like how good comedy is now. But at one point, I think it was like 138 million unique people watching it. It never dipped below like 50,000 at one time. Wow. And the craziest was PewDiePie, everyone's favorite fascist YouTuber, at one point in the middle of the night in Sweden was like, what the hell am I watching? Put up the link to it, and it just shot right up. And it was Unicorn Party.
Influencers.
Yeah. Unicorn Party fighting a giant guar-looking guy in Toronto. And people are, and one of the best like things was just someone just wrote, I'm uninstalling Twitch.
Because all right, so my first experience with Kaiju, Kaiju did the pre-show at some other wrestling event. I want to say Dragon Gate USA.
Yeah, I think so. That was way before I was.
And this was 2010, 11, like it was years ago. Yeah. And my like it was weird, and like I understand the idea of it and everything, but one of the things was the ring announcer was doing color commentary the entire time, which was a little annoying to me.
It's the only way you can tell a story though with these characters. So
because there's no it's a live product. I totally understand. The other funny thing was that wrestling fans would know that Pennsylvania has a state athletic commission. Yeah. and the head of that, or the representative of that, was there, and he kept trying to give the prop buildings to people in the audience.
No.
And the kaiju people would be like, I need that back. We're not done with this yet.
There's a reason why we keep this, because it's literally cushion our falls.
Like,
when I'm dressed like a giant hamburger and I'm doing a backflip, like, that keeps me from dying.
It just made me laugh so much that Frank Tennant just kept going around just stealing buildings and giving them to children. And then a kaiju guy would come back and steal the building back and put it back. That made me chuckle the entire night.
Yeah, it's like,
right.
after the show, you can keep all of our garbage.
Yeah,
but
give us 30
alive.
minutes with it.
Yeah.
All right. So tell us some of the characters of kaiju.
Oh man. Okay. So kaiju, the main villain of Kaiju Big Battel is a villainous Dr. Cube, who's an immortal mad scientist who's like horribly scarred visage is protected by this giant cube.
Yeah.
And he's constantly has a frowny face. Up until recently, there was an infinite amount of Dr. Cubes that showed up through a interdimensional portal.
Okay.
And they all killed each other off at last year's WrestleMania, or this past year's WrestleMania.
So now there's just one singular three.
Yeah.
There's three. Okay.
There's three. Each one's denoting a different region where Kaiju Big Battel runs their shows.
Right. I forgot about that.
Yeah. And also, it's a cube. We originally wanted to do 6. Or we wanted to do how many sides are in a cube?
6.
6 sides. Yeah. I think that's what it was. But then it was like, let's just do 3. So Dr. Cube has a whole bunch of his biological experiments, and some of them are mechanical too. And they just terrorize people and their hidden plants and corporations, and that's how it gets funding for blah blah blah. There's the heroes team, which are the heroes, the good guys. There's American Beetle.
That's the one I remember. American Beetle.
He's a jingoistic beetle who of a Mexican heritage, who loves America and.
Okay.
So here's the funniest thing. The character is supposed to be a American-born or a Mexican-born American who's played by an Australian, and his voice is done by a Puerto Rican. So, that's one thing I did when I started writing too, is that I was like, more characters should talk. So we have a representative from each faction, because there's a couple different factions. Some other notable heroes are Power Ranger, who's like a fairy princess and also a Power Ranger. 2 of our newest heroes are Bear Ranger and the Burger Bear, who Bear Ranger looks like the Yellow Ranger, except he's a bear cub.
And I'm assuming that Burger is that
giant hamburger
that you mentioned flipping in.
Yeah, with bear legs and bear arms.
I mean, you weren't in it.
No, not at all. But I just happened to disappear. And then there's also this other one who's supposed to be an over-the-hill rock and roller named Metal Wing Black. Totally not me, also. Does all T.J. Perkins moves. And then there's steam-powered Tentacle Boulder, who used to be your hero. Now he's a rogue. And he's exactly what his name sounds like. There's the Sea. Oh, they're no longer the Sea Amigos. They're gone. They're now called the Sea World Order, because they now have a big Godzilla purple monster. You haven't seen that named Squilla.
I haven't seen a lot of kaiju
the
recently.
Iron Brothers, who kind of look like they're from a Judge Dredd comic book, and then the actual secret is that there's just a whole bunch of parts, and no matter how you put them together, that's one of the Iron Brothers. So,
okay.
So there's a huge cast of characters. They're all giant foam monsters. Been able to travel a lot with it, and it's kind of funny.
You mentioned that there's 3 regional.
Yeah.
So it's Northeast, South
Florida,
Texas. Oh, okay, Florida, and then
kind of in Canada.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It didn't go. I thought you guys were going south, like Texas.
We'd love to. There's enough people. It's literally just logistics, because at the end of the day, it's a storage locker full of rubber suits and 10 of us.
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah. It's a lot.
Get all that stuff there.
That's where a lot of the planning I learned from sketch comedy comes into play.
Getting a ring somewhere is easy, because there's
getting
wrestling rings everywhere. But
getting a ring, getting people into the suits is super easy, and I think it's as far as working with performers, everybody's really good to they're really happy to do it.
Yeah, because they're not portraying their normal wrestling selves.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter.
There's a regular guy.
There's no they don't have to worry about winning that match or their next show, trying to build their whatever momentum or everything. They can just be this giant cheeseburger for a night and just hang out.
I'd have to say 80% of the 205 Live roster on WWE was part of Kaiju Big Battel. It was really funny, because when they all got signed, we were like, well,
we just lost these people.
Yeah. But it's really funny. just being like, hey, look, there's a giant can of soup fighting a waffle.
Yeah.
And now they're battling over a belt on the WWE network. But one of my favorite guys to work with, he's a professional wrestler. He like looks like a professional. He's very kind of like that, super serious.
Mm-hmm.
Except as soon as he puts on a costume, like his what they say work rate, just 100 times.
Just a completely different style,
like,
completely different.
He goes all out, and it's just like, dude, why don't you just work like that all the time?
How is it to take the bumps in the suit? Like, is it?
You don't feel anything.
I was about to say it has to.
Well, okay, when you're wearing a giant can of soup, or a giant burger, or a giant waffle, you don't feel anything.
There's padding, there's extra padding to it. There's
just a red and blue Power Ranger helmet, and then someone just decides to give you a exploder.
I'm sure that's not as
that's
enjoyable.
like not the best thing in the world, and I'm not
have
like,
a hard thing
professional
around your
wrestler
head.
by any means. So,
all right, so we've talked about, like, I don't know how to wrap this up now. All right, so normal pattern questions at the end. What's something that you've learned from comedy that you'd pass on to somebody, either existential or real life lessons, or something practical about writing process?
Be empathetic with your collaborators. Listen. Put your ego aside and this is like the hardest. It was like the hardest thing for me to learn is like put your ego aside and just let everybody talk, but at the same time stand up for your shit, as they say.
Yeah.
You know, like if you feel like something there's a sketch that I wanted to do for the longest time, and I remember it was the jog off. Did you ever see that?
I don't remember.
I did it at Dan Petrano's show, and it was like exactly the way I wanted. It played exactly the way I wanted it to.
Okay.
Like, because I would write these like huge set pieces, and I think at the time like my friends at Bear Hug, they just like were like, I don't get it.
Right.
They're like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to cause a stir. I'm like, the joke is that all of a sudden 30 people like a marathon comes running through the venue. Like that's like you don't expect that, and that's a lot of that whole like Letterman type stuff that I grew up watching. But
yeah,
like understand if people are like, hey, it's just not possible to do this bit. It's not the end of the world for that. Maybe it needs to go through a couple more revisions. Always constantly be rewriting your stuff. Like nothing's like a hit out of the gate.
I think the rewriting thing is big because I don't think we rewrote enough.
Yeah.
In the Judo Range days.
I agree. I think
that was our one big failure.
We were always on a time crunch.
Or
too.
one of our big failures.
Yeah. We were just too buff.
Yeah.
I guess it was. But yeah, like it's always your work is just be like don't ever think anything's good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're not going to get better. You're not going to evolve as a writer. But really, like, the big thing for me is just be really empathetic towards all the people that you're working with. Understand where they're coming from. Set the expectation for who you are as a performer. If you want to just do a performer role, that's cool. If you want to be a writer, don't stretch yourself too thin. That was the big thing. It's really awesome to get involved with the community, especially like
there's
really,
only so many hours in a day. There's
you can burn yourself out.
Real life comedy, relationships, like you need to.
Yeah.
That stupid, what is that? That stupid jar golf ball thing, like.
Oh, you can put the sand in here. You can put the water in here.
Yeah, that one.
Just be a bigger jar. Yeah, come on. No, just get a bigger jar. Hey.
And then, why you don't do much sketch comedy like in the traditional on-stage sense anymore. It's mostly in the pro wrestling,
new
kaiju.
media, new media platforms. Yeah.
Why do you do it?
Them hits. I'm making the money thing on my hand.
Your percentage of a penny for every 10,000 views on YouTube.
Those good internet bucks that I get. No, I like working in a video in that medium, because again, like I write crazy set pieces that are just like how the heck I think the solution we did for this was I had McGrail wear a yellow and black shirt, and then they ended up like sitting on Joe Moore's lap. When we did Cop and Bee at SketchUp.
Okay.
But it just allows me to do a whole lot more with the type of writing I want to do. And I like being able to go back and like see it again. But at the same time with a live performance, like a kaiju show, the cool thing about that is that it's like literally just in the moment. And the whole thing that thrives off of is I just saw a can of soup and a waffle and a giant burger fight a tree, a scab, and a giant piece of asparagus. Like,
so weird.
Yeah. It's
So weird. You'll never see it anywhere else.
yeah.
Like,
Oh, there have been many imitators.
I'm sure that other people try. I'm sure.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Ian.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. Really appreciate it. Yeah.
Kaiju Big Battel is heading to Brooklyn, New York on October 8th, but according to Ticketfly, it's already sold out, so too late for you guys. And then Kaiju is heading to Somerville, Massachusetts on November 18th. You can head to kaiju.com, that's kaiju.com, for more information. And like I mentioned up top, I posted a bunch of the videos that we talk about at myfirstsketch.com. Don't forget, Sync or Sketch at the Philly Improv Theater this Thursday, October 5th at 9 p.m. And then Dirtiest Sketch in Philadelphia on October 20th, 10 p.m. at the Playground at the Adrienne. My First Sketch is a Philly Sketchfest production. You can find out more information at phillysketchfest.com or on Twitter at PHLSketchfest. Also, for more information about comedy in Philly, head to watercooler.com. The music on this episode is by the band No, which you can check out at nonoband.bandcamp.com. As always, like My First Sketch on Facebook. This is Josh Hyam. Thanks for listening. Go see some comedy. Especially Thursday night at 9 p.m. at PHIT. Sync or Sketch.